the end of the first week of November every year with New York University. And this year that will be online. So normally what happens is that throughout the summer, we do a lot of preliminary rounds. So it's actually a worldwide event. So it happens in Israel and in Southern America, in France, and several other countries with New York University, and they happen concurrently. So initially, there are multiple different competitions that happens as part of the what we call CISAW. CISAW is the Cybersecurity Awareness Week, and in that there is Capture the Flag competition, there is Applied Research competition, there is Embedded Security Challenge, there is in some sites they have quiz also, and then in some sites they have also the legal and policy competition, and several other. Last year we also did a critical infrastructure hacking competition here in our part of the program. So during the preliminaries, people do things from home. They submit their work and it gets reviewed by reviewers. And then the finalists are called to the campuses. Like the Northern American competitors are invited to go to New York University, New York. People from Europe, they go to Grenoble, France. People in Israel, they go to Beersheba. People in the Maghreb region of Africa, they go to Tunisia, this kind of stuff. So this year, due to COVID, we are doing it online, so it will be a little bit scaled back this year. But 5 November 5, 6, 7, we are going to host it online. So all these competitors, the Capture the Flag competitors will work for 36 hours from their homes. Other years, the top 10 teams from India, they come here on campus, and we provide them with the platform and network, etc. This year it's going to be slightly different. Also, for Applied Research competition, there is a presentation which is judged by a number of experts. So that is going to happen on the 6th morning. And 6th afternoon, there will be Embedded Security Challenge demonstration and presentations, this kind of stuff. And the final results will be announced concurrently with New York University and other sites on the 8th. So we do that already as part of the cybersecurity awareness program. But this one came kind of suddenly from the Office of the National Security Council, and they particularly mentioned that we should do something for the Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October. So we quickly put together something, and therefore we could not bring expert lecturers from outside, etc. We just doing 2 sessions today. One session which is for cybersecurity for everyone, keeping yourself safe online, and then the next one we are going to do tomorrow, which is about the cyber laws and the regulations that are extant in India, so that everybody who is interested knows what are the laws, what are the recourses they can take when they get hacked, and what they should do in their particular sector, because there are sector-specific regulations of cybersecurity in India. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. So today, what I want you to understand is that this is very, very preliminary ideas about what are the dangers that we are facing today in terms of cyber threats, and also how to do some very simple-minded things that will keep you kind of safe online from various online activities. So first of all, so here is the outline of the talk, that we'll talk about threats to our privacy and security of what we possess. And then I'll talk a little bit about why is it that it is so easy for hackers to do things today, that why, many times we used to think, people used to think that, to do cyber hack, one has to be a hacker, one has to know a lot of, computer science, or at least, the nitty-gritty details about hacking. But that's not the case, and therefore you will see that a lot more criminal groups are getting into ransomware attacks, data exfiltration attacks, also attacks on your bank accounts, compromising your phone. All kinds of actions that we see are nowadays no longer requires an expertise in cybersecurity or in computer science. They can purchase the service of very sophisticated hackers back, in various countries, like usually in Eastern Europe, Russia, North Korea, Iran, all kinds of places. So, so then I'll talk about some basic good practices. So basic good practices, first thing is that we often see that the password that are set by people are more for their own convenience than the right hygiene of password that they should have followed. So while I'll talk about importance of password and also importance of two-factor authentication, we'll talk about securing emails, and there is a lot of questions about how secure is your email from prying eyes, and we'll talk about that. Then I'll talk a little bit about, we often connect to the network, free network, or 30-minute free network at various airports, at the coffee shops, and so on. And then how to keep yourself safe in those situations. Then I'll talk about phishing and how to look out for signs of phishing. Then I'll talk about the importance of backup. Like you have to take your data backup very seriously and more frequently, and we'll talk about that. And then a little bit about smartphone security. And then one thing that we don't take very seriously in India is that the privacy, right? So we often compromise our privacy by doing insecure communications, and sometimes that lead to a lot of trouble in many ways, even from the government. So we have to we'll talk about that. Keeping your data at rest secure, like how, if somebody gets hold of your machine while you are away from your desk, or somehow get hold of your machine while you give that machine to a repair shop. Like we are hearing a lot about this Hunter Biden laptop being discovered in a shop, which is probably not true, but that can happen to anybody. And then securing files with collaborators. We often use things like Dropbox, or we often use other cloud platforms like Google Drive or something. We'll talk about how secure they are. Browsing privacy, when you browse something, how private is your browsing. And then finally, many of you use Wi-Fi routers at home. You have a broadband connection from some ISP, and you have a Wi-Fi router. What goes wrong with this Wi-Fi routers when you are not aware of the security practices? We'll finish with that. So let's talk about some interesting case that will kind of give you some idea about what kind of threat environment we are living in today. So this is an old story. So this attack is not possible right now because Amazon, Apple, and Google all have fixed their cybersecurity policies that were in the wrong, and which led to a kind of an hacker using the wrong policies of all these three platforms to hack a guy called Matt Honan. So the guy, now your email, everybody knows what your email is. And in Gmail, usually your email is your username. So username is easy to find. So this guy's somebody wanted to get to his Gmail account. Now Gmail, now you don't have the password, right? So you have to go and try to reset the password. So at that time, the Gmail security policy allowed that whenever you ask for resetting the password, it will not only will send you a verification link to a backup email that you had configured when you created your Gmail account, but it will helpfully print part of that account, right? So it will say, let's say your alternative account is xyz at apple.com, then it will probably say x star star at app star star e, etc. So from that, guessing what it is not that difficult. So this guy's backup email address was on me.com, which is an Apple email address. So in order to retrieve the verification link, in order to reset the password of Google, the hacker now has to go to Apple and has to reset that password. So what he does, he goes to Apple and try to reset the password. And at that time, Apple's policy allowed that if you can type in the right billing address and last 4 digits of the credit card on file, then it will allow you to reset the password. Now, billing address can be easily found, especially if the person is well known. This person was known, so billing address was not the problem. Problem is, how do I get 4 digits, last 4 digits of his credit card that's on file? So now the guy knows that Amazon also keeps some credit cards on file. And at that time, Amazon was allowing you to add a new credit card to your account without logging into your Amazon account. So you don't need to log into Amazon in order to add a credit card. So what this guy does, he goes and adds his own credit card to Matt Honan's Amazon account, which was based on his Gmail address. So now the Amazon account has this credit card, which doesn't really belong to Matt Honan, but it belonged to the hacker. Now he goes to Amazon password reset. Now, Amazon password reset allows that if you can type in one of the credit cards on file, it will allow you to reset the password. Now the hacker himself has put in that credit card, so he can easily type that in and he resets the Amazon password. Once he resets the Amazon password, he looks up the other credit cards on the account and found one that matches his the credit card on file on his Apple account, and thereby he could get to the reset the Apple password. Once he reset the Apple password, the next one was the Apple email he could access, and Apple email had his verification link from Gmail. So he could click on that and go get a reset link, and he reset the Gmail password and then exfiltrated all his email. So here you see that all the three, and not a single one, could not have done this. So Gmail itself was not at fault completely, but all three together and are interlinked in some way through the user, and also their security policies in terms of when and how the password reset works was weak and not well thought out, and they interacted in a way so that this email was his email was compromised. So this is the kind of things that you don't think too much about. You have all these different accounts and you don't read the password reset policy of all this, and even if you read them in isolation, to see a path, what we call an attack path or kill chain, is not very easy for common people to think about. It requires a lot of cyber threat modeling experience in order to figure out that all these three password reset activities or password reset policies will actually work together to compromise these accounts. So that's one story. Another story, if you many of you are probably not old enough to remember this, but Sarah Palin was one of the vice presidential candidate in 2008 in the US, and her Yahoo ML account was hacked. And the way it was hacked is that her Yahoo account allowed the password reset by answering security questions. And this is still true in many systems where you are asked to answer some security questions, and if you correctly answer them, you can reset the password. So what the problem in this case was that Yahoo security questions were like, what was your high school name? What is your birthday? Or what is your mother's maiden name and all that stuff. Now, for a well-known person like Sarah Palin, you can actually know all these things by doing some Google search, etc. And that way her email account was hacked. And this can happen if any time somebody does observe your social network activities, your Facebook activities, your LinkedIn activities, etc. They actually can gather a lot of information about you. And if your site only requires the security questions to be answered, many times through those type of information gathering, one can easily answer those security questions and can reset the password and thereby do this kind of a hacking. Although Yahoo has changed since then, their policy, it's well, nobody uses Yahoo anymore, so it's kind of irrelevant. So Yahoo also had a big hack about 5 years ago, where about 1 billion people's Yahoo account username and passwords were hacked. And I'll talk about how you can find out if your username and password got hacked. And maybe you have an Yahoo account, you don't use it anymore, but you may be using that password in other sites. If that is the case, then you probably will be compromised, because your password, the hackers often try, once they find your password for one account, and knowing the tendency of people to use the same password across multiple accounts, people do actually get compromised that way. So that's just two examples I gave. Now, why is it so easy to hack these days? And earlier it used to be the the area where what we call kiddie, script kiddies, people who are good at script writing and all that stuff used to do some hacking stuff. And then over time, it has happened that the criminal gangs now use hacking techniques to actually deliver ransomware. They deliver various kinds of threats. They deliver malware, etc. And how do they get these things? How do they use sophisticated techniques to hack you when they're criminal gangs? So you assume that they're not engineers and computer scientists and so on. So for that, they have the dark web, right? So dark web is that part of the web that is the part of the web that you access through URLs like facebook.com or google.com or timesofindia.com, etc. That's called the surface web. And surface web is a very small part of what is accessible through the HTTP, HTTPS protocols. The parts that are not accessible through this URLs, they are called that's called the dark web. And dark web has many layers. Some layers are very much hidden. Unless you know a particular IP address, etc., you will not be able to access it. And even if you go there, you may need special security private keys public keys, etc., in order to get there, because it's a very highly protected. And that's where criminals actually sell and buy things. And that's where there is a marketplace for buying exploits, the various kinds of exploits that can be used to attack others. Dinesh, I'll answer your question after the talk, but keep writing the questions. So there is a marketplace for buying hacking services, and there are hidden message boards and chat rooms for hackers where they exchange techniques, they exchange the payloads, even they will do it for you if you pay them in cryptocurrency, for example. So this is Andy Greenberg for Forbes, who did a search in the dark web. He pretended to be one of the buyers, and he kind of gave us this idea, and this is pretty old, 8 years ago. Now, all the software that we use, like be it Adobe Reader for loading our PDF file, or Mac OS, or Android, or Windows, or Microsoft Word, you will find that there are security patches coming every month or even more frequently. So they all have security vulnerabilities. Security vulnerabilities, if they can be exploited, they can escape the Adobe Reader or escape the application, and can actually take over your machine, do deliver malware, deliver ransomware, do various kinds of things. And so therefore, and most people, they don't patch. Like you just think, when was the last time when you patched or downloaded the latest update of your Adobe Reader, or when did you last updated your Android phone, or when did you last updated your Microsoft Office, and when did you last update your Safari, Chrome, or Firefox? So Chrome had a very important security fix last week. So how many of you actually downloaded and patched your Chrome? Those are things that will tell you why these things work. So there in 2012, the exploits were selling for anywhere between 5,000 to 30,000 for PDF files, specially instrumented PDF file, which will deliver payload through a unpatched Adobe Reader. And iOS exploits were more expensive, 100,000 to 250,000. So this is something that criminal gangs can afford, or state actors like foreign countries who are trying to infiltrate the cyberspace of another country can actually use. And then there are criminal gangs. They actually own a lot of machines across the world, and these are called botnets. So they actually infiltrate many machines, and your machine could be one of them, where there is a hidden malware which remains more or less dormant, but they open backdoors. They actually people can connect to the machine through these backdoors, or they actually don't have backdoors, but they get commands from a bot controller, or what we call a command and control server. And if the command and control server says that now send spam emails, or send phishing emails, or send deliver some keylogger into the machine that you are sitting in, they can do that instantaneously. And these botnet services are sold by these criminal gangs, and therefore the cost. This is 2011. Some people went and into the dark web and found that at that time in the US, to deliver payload to 1,000 machines, they were charging $100 to $180. And in Asia, that rate was much less at that time. It was $7 to $8 per 1,000 machines. So you see that so you see that all these things are possible. And I'm just giving you a very summary description of what's happening. You can find more about these criminal activities, and there are books written on this. So this is something that changed the trend of cyber attack, that the cyber attacks have become much easier, they have been commoditized, and anybody who wants to attack, they can actually buy the services. And that's why we see that now countries like North Korea, Iran, some of the countries have become very, very active in the cyberspace, in cyber attack. Okay, so so now what are the things that you could do to do things to keep yourself safe? Now, there is no 100% security. So every cybersecurity expert will tell you that there is no 100% security. There is always a non-trivial chance that irrespective of all the things that you are supposed to do, and you have done them, but you can still get attacked. So don't feel any false sense of safety. Even if you do all this, you have to be vigilant, and this vigilance is very important. But certain things you should certainly do, and password hygiene is one of the important things that you have to do. Now, we have a tendency nowadays, we have to create passwords in very many different sites, etc., and we have a tendency to reuse the same password. Now, if one of the sites get compromised, then you will get other sites also compromised, because people know there's tendency, and they actually will, once they find your password and email address in some database, they will then try to use this across various services, and in some cases they will succeed. So use a password manager like 1Password or LastPass, etc., where you can lock all your passwords, and when you need to use those passwords, you copy them and then use them, and then again lock them back up. Right? So using a password manager, and if some password managers will even generate random passwords for you, and you don't have to remember them. You can actually use the password manager to actually open the password manager when you want to log into a particular site, copy that random password, and use that. Now, if you don't use password manager and password manager's capability to actually do this, also you have to choose your password manager carefully through proper research. So some password manager themselves may be malware. So you download a random password manager from somewhere, and they might be making a connection to through your internet to a backend server and sending all your passwords. So you have to be very careful about which password manager you choose, and do some research to do that. Now, if you don't do that, you should use very long passwords for your accounts. So in one case, we actually one time cracked hundreds of passwords of people in IIT Kanpur, because the hashed password file was kept in public domain for some reason. That was back in 2016, and we found that people had passwords like Dolly123 and stuff like that, which obviously can be easily deciphered from its hash using dictionary attacks. So your password should be very strong, and by strong password we mean like it has to be very long password, and oftentimes like it can be a phrase that are not a popular lyric or something that everybody knows, but something that is very personal to you, right? So here are some examples of these kind of passwords that I have listed, but this is just to give you examples. On the other hand, common cultural references are not good idea, because their hashes will be known in a dictionary, and the dictionary attacks can actually decipher them. Now, if the site forces you to use special characters, use them in a spaced way. Don't use them, bunch them together, because site is saying that you have to have a special character, a number. You put the number, special character, etc., and then a dictionary word or two dictionary words just juxtaposed together. Those things can be easily deciphered with dictionary attack. And if you have a strong, long, personalized, memory-based password, try not to change them. So now there has been research on this, and people have shown that asking people to change their password too often actually is counterproductive, and actually make people try to use easier passwords because they have to change it often. So now some sites actually, the security policy of some organization may be that they have to change password every 6 months, 1 year, etc. In that case, you have to do it. I would say use password manager. But in case you don't, then you obviously will be, don't try to use shortcuts. Never use the same password in 2 or more sites, especially sites that have importance, like your bank sites or your credit card sites or your email sites, etc. Don't reuse the same password in all those places. We already said that. Now, one thing, that do not trust your browser to remember your password, right? So browsers, like I said, Chrome browser had two important security patches last week. Now, if you don't patch it, you don't know who will get access and what can happen. So you don't trust your browser to remember passwords. You use a password manager, a reputed password manager. And then if there is an option for two-factor authentication, always use that, right? So you use Google Authenticator or Duo Authenticator. So if any site that you build, if you can make two-factor authentication enabled, that certainly is a much better option than just having password as your way to authenticate yourself. Now, second thing is that keeping your communications private, right? So communications privacy has many reasons. One reason is, of course, like if you send things in SMS, it's very easy to hack SMS, right? So therefore you should not use even, so for example, for your bank, you should use some app, specially made, tailor-made by the bank to actually generate your OTP on the phone rather than depend on SMS, because SMS can be easily hacked through various ways, and it has happened many times. But text messaging, if you're trying to do secure messaging, WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, but WhatsApp doesn't keep the information that you send and the information that is received by the recipient encrypted. They are actually in a database, and which is in plain text. So if somebody gets some malware into your phone, and that malware can somehow root your phone, then they can actually get all your WhatsApp. And you might have heard about Pegasus malware, and a lot of governments were actually using Pegasus to actually keep track of WhatsApp messages sent by activists and so on. And therefore, WhatsApp is not necessarily the most secure way of communicating. Signal is WhatsApp uses the same end-to-end encryption technique as Signal, but Signal is something that the cryptographers, Edward Snowden, all recommend for use. Signal also has the ability, and WhatsApp is now talking about that ability. It hasn't enabled it yet, which is that disappearing messages. So you can actually set a timer that after so many days, or maybe after 10 minutes, whatever you set, all the messages will disappear and completely deleted from your data, from the phone database. And that's better, because that way, even if somebody gets to your phone, use a Pegasus malware or something, they may not be able to get to your old messages. Signal also warns you when the other party's unique key changes, so that you know that the person has not changed or something. You can call them and see whether they reinstalled Signal or some other reason why their key has changed. Now, there are other messaging apps for like Wire, Threema, and Weaker. And these things has other advantage, that they don't require your phone number to sign up. So if your phone number is not used to sign up, then it gives you a lot more anonymity than Signal or WhatsApp gives you. iMessage Facebook secret conversation also are end-to-end encrypted, but some of these also keep metadata, right? So Signal does not keep any metadata, but metadata means that who communicated with whom, not necessarily what was communicated, because end-to-end encryption prevents even the company to see it. But metadata can be kept, and it can be actually used by others to know what your communication pattern is, who you are communicating with, how many times, etc., etc. And other thing that nowadays we are using is Zoom and other things. Now, none of the video conferencing tools, with an exception of WebEx Professional, which are end-to-end encrypted. And when something is not end-to-end encrypted, which means that any discussion, any video, audio that is being sent, that is being done through the Zoom or something, is actually being unencrypted in the server of Zoom. And therefore, anybody who can hack into that server, or any government that wants to get into that server, will actually get all the video and audio of any session on these platforms. And therefore, you should not use business secrets and other confidential government information, etc., on any of these applications, because they will be they have a possibility of getting revealed to a third party. Now, email is one of the most non-confidential thing that is happening around the internet. You know that Google is scanning all our emails, and actually you will be surprised that when you send emails and then suddenly you get product advertisements on something that you actually discussed on an email and so on. But that is done by machine. That is not done by humans. But if machines can do it, then machines can also flag a human user that such and such discussion is happening, and you can take a look, and they will be able to take a look. Same thing with the organizational email, right? So organizational emails are usually not encrypted. And what that means is that the mail server administrator has full access to all the emails that come and go through that mail server. So if you want end-to-end encrypted emails, then either you have to encrypt it yourself, so you can actually encrypt and then make that part of the email as attachment, something which is quite possible. People often do PGP, public-private key to exchange emails, especially when we discuss patent information and so on. But that's very inconvenient. That doesn't come naturally with the email. Now, there are email services that are end-to-end encrypted, like Proton Mail. So, but other side has to also be on Proton Mail to have the end-to-end encryption. If you're sending from Proton Mail a mail to a Gmail, it is not end-to-end encrypted anymore. Now, there are other email services like Enigmail, which integrates with Thunderbird to do end-to-end encryption. There are also browser plugin for which does encryption for Gmail, but browser plugins themselves are notorious for security risks, and so it's probably not a very good idea to use that. And if you really have something very confidential to discuss, it might be more convenient or more secure to actually use a one-to-one communication over something like Signal messaging application, because they actually can transfer quite a bit of data these days. So you don't have to necessarily use an email to discuss something confidential. But this is one of the things that needs to change in the internet, that emails should be end-to-end encryptable. But more and more we are using things like third-party cloud-based services like Gmail, etc. It is becoming harder and harder, because once you start doing that, Gmail will have no incentive to let you use their service, because the reason why they let you use your service is because they make revenues out of that. Now, the next thing is that when you are in an airport, or when you are in a uh, when you are in a cafeteria, etc., you often use their wireless. Now that is very, very serious problem for many reasons, right? So one is that there is something called an evil twin. So even if the wireless, or the company that is providing the cafeteria owner that has set up the wireless, he might not know security very well. That's one problem. But even if he does everything, there is something called evil twin. So somebody can set up a another access point with the same wireless SSID broadcast from there, and somehow jam the other signal and attract you to their access point. And then once you are through their access point, they can actually make you do a lot of things that you don't know. Even your bank password, etc., will be gone. So first of all, you should not do bank transactions, credit card transactions, etc., sitting in a public Wi-Fi. But even if you have to do that, you should use a VPN, right? So VPN is a virtual private network. So now you should not use VPN servers in countries like China and Russia, etc., but you should use VPN in that are well known. So for example, ExpressVPN, TunnelBear, NordVPN, these are some of the more secure VPNs. They cost you money, but if you are always on the road, and if you are always connecting to public Wi-Fi, it's probably worth it to actually subscribe to a VPN service. And then the VPN will actually create a tunnel from your machine to the VPN server. So the Wi-Fi access point, etc., will not see your data unencrypted. So all your data will be encrypted all the way to the VPN server. But at the VPN server, it may have to be unencrypted, and therefore the VPN server should be trustworthy. And so therefore one has to be careful. Now, phishing is one of the major thing that is fooling people, and phishing comes in many forms. Like, so they come through email, Facebook Messenger, they come through WhatsApp, they come through SMS messages. They have any way of communication. You get phishing emails. Phishing emails are basically a link sent to you saying that something that is very urgent, like you are not your account is going to expire, and you have to go click here and go and log into your account and fix this, and various other things. Sometimes it's actually luring to some kind of a scoop, or luring to a lottery, that luring to various other things. Now, this phishing actually, once you click on the link and so on, there are many things that can happen. One is that you actually click on the link and it gives you shows you a website that's very similar to a familiar website, like your banking website or your Gmail website, etc. And you think that it is a real website. You type in your username and password, and they get your username and password. So that's one of the way the phishing actually fools you. But the other way is that you go to the phishing link, and then it is actually a site where if you go, it immediately downloads something on your machine. And that could be actually an exe file or some kind of an executable file, and that will be a malware, right? And then phishing can also come in the form of a file, a picture, a video, some kind of a voice message, and they are all actually malware, right? So you click on them, and you are basically executing a malware on your system, right? So therefore, one has to be very, very careful about when you get email or some message from somebody unknown, and even if you get it from somebody known, because one of the characteristics of phishing is that first they get the first guy who gets compromised, and then they use their address book to send the email to all their friends. So friends seem to see that to them it seems like their friend has sent this message, and then they have more tendency to click, and therefore they get fall victim, and then their friends also get the same, and so on. So this is something that happens a lot with a video on Facebook Messenger, for example. And therefore, and nowadays, malware is one thing. Now, multi-factor authentication, if you had enabled on your bank or on your other sites, then this trick will not work, because when they take you to a different site, when you type in your username and password, you will not get an OTP from the bank, and then you realize that this is not the real site. And by then, of course, your password has been compromised, so you have to go quickly to the real one and change your password, etc. So that's something can be done. But also you have to protect your data by backing up your data, because the malware that is going to be delivered through phishing might be a ransomware, and this is happening at a very, very rapid pace. And I'll give you some statistics tomorrow when we talk about regulations and laws. And ransomware, India is one of the most attacked country in terms of ransomware, probably behind US. So one has to actually have their data backup in case they get fooled by phishing. Their data will completely be encrypted, and unless you pay, they will not decrypt your data. And if you have backup, then you can completely forego the data and use the backup. So as I said, that sometimes if your password has been compromised on some site, they might actually use that password to try on other sites, and sometimes it works. And to know whether you have been your email has been compromised, email and password has been compromised from some site, you can go to this website called haveibeenpawned.com and type all your emails one by one, and it will tell you which of your emails have been already in public database, whether the password is also accompanying that leaked data, etc. And if you haven't changed, and it will also tell you when it was breached, and if you have changed the password on that site since then you probably are okay. If you haven't, you should immediately change those passwords in those sites, and make sure. And if you are using the same password at other sites, you should change them as well. Now, as I said, that phishing also comes through SMS, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, email, whatnot. And usually they, say something that very, very urgent. Like they say that there is suspicious activity or login attempts on your bank, so I want you to verify, or they will say that there is some problem in your account, or they can say that you must confirm some personal information. They might give you a fake invoice, or you are eligible for register for some refund, all that stuff, right? So you have to be very, very guarded about what you click and what you download from the email. So now there is, I already mentioned that you have to back up your data very, very regularly, because ransomware is a real threat these days. And even on our campus, we have had cases where students had their data. Now, if you're a PhD student or master student, you're doing your thesis, all your code and all your thesis write-up may actually be jeopardized, because you have been compromised with the ransomware. Now, so backup is very important. So back up your data on a daily basis, if possible, even more frequently. You don't have to back up everything. You can back up targeted folders, so that you don't have a lot of data to back up. So things that are very important, like your thesis work, your code, etc., you might want to back up on a daily basis, especially the ones that you're changing on a daily basis. If you have not changed something, then the older backup will also do. But things that are changing, especially when you're writing or doing a project, etc., all that stuff has to be backed up. Now, there are many, then you have to encrypt the disk and detach the disk, because if you keep the disk connected, or the USB connected, then the ransomware will also find its way to that backup also, and completely encrypt your backup also, and that's not going to help you, right? So this happened in like when the NotPetya ransomware came. And what NotPetya did was that, so they attacked many sites, but one of the things that they did is a company called Maersk, which is a company that do shipping, and they also they manage ports, etc. So Bombay's Jawaharlal Nehru port is managed by Maersk, and it's actually I believe it's a Dutch company, or Danish company, I don't remember. So what Maersk had is that they had a attack on NotPetya, and they had in more than 160 countries they have data centers where data is backed up. So since they are all connected to each other, so every facility got ransomware. So every backup got ransomware. Fortunately, one of the African countries had no power that day, and therefore that data center was not encrypted. And next day they had to fly that server in a first class cabin in aeroplane back to the headquarters to restore from that backup. But that was actually some kind of serendipitous act. It could have been also ransomware if the power was there. So the lesson from this is that your backup should always be disconnected from the rest of the system once backup is completed, and only be connected when you need to take backup. So that's very important. Now, once you back up your disk, you disconnect, that disk physically may be stolen, and then all your data will be stolen. So therefore, you have to also encrypt the disk, right? So there are many programs like TrueCrypt, AxCrypt, StorageCrypt, etc. And you have to at least important folders you have to encrypt, and you have to give a strong password, and you have to remember the password, etc., so that your backup is secure even from any kind of physical attack. Now, the next thing I want to say is that all of you are probably using smartphone. Now, smartphones are transferable, so anybody can pick up your smartphone and start looking into your private data. In India, there is very little notion of privacy, for example. So often people your friends will pick up your phone and start browsing through it. In many countries, that is considered an extremely bad manners to actually pick up somebody's phone. But it happens in India. I've seen a lot. So your phone has a lot of private information, including probably your medical reports from your doctor, your blood report maybe from doctors, maybe your grades, maybe some certificates, your Aadhaar card copy or PAN card copy. All kinds of information are on your phone. So other than the fact that all your communications with your friends, your girlfriends, boyfriends, etc., also are private information, right? So you must make sure that your phone locks in 30 seconds or even less idle time. And it may be annoying, but it's much safer. There is also a SIM lock facility, right? Now, SIM lock is different from the phone lock. So SIM lock actually disables the SIM. Now, why is it important? Because if somebody gets hold of your SIM, they actually can get the SMS, OTPs for your bank, etc. And there may be SIM fraud. So locking your SIM, most Android phones allow you to lock your SIM and then lock the screen. Now, using something like fingerprint or face scan is not necessarily the best. Pattern-based unlocking is the worst. Because it leaves smudges on your phone. So if somebody gets hold of your phone and your phone screen has those smudges, they can easily find it. Hard to guess numeric pin is probably the best compared to fingerprint or face scan, because it has been shown that fingerprint and face scan can be faked through various ways. Somebody can lift your fingerprint from a glass you used and then use a 3D printer, and this has been done to to other terminals and so on. So we don't want that. Face scan is also Apple 10 face scan was easily fooled. So face scan is also not probably the safest. So the safest would be use a very hard to guess numerical pin. And most important is that you must have your phone patched. Your phone, like Android had a update, Android 11 had an update last week. Now, how many of you have done that? So think about that, and you must ensure that you have the backup. Now, the way Android updates happen is that once a security vulnerability is detected, Google first fixes it, and then all the other OEMs like your Samsung and your other phone vendors will then fix it. So Pixel, the Google's phone, gets the patch first. So Pixel phone is probably the safest if you're using the Android phone, because it gets the patches first. Now, some of the cheaper phones, the Chinese phones and so on, they get their they don't get the patches until for 6 months and so on. And that's actually very complex, and of course the phones from China, etc., has other things like backdoors and so on. So if you are very concerned about your privacy, you should not be using a phone that is of questionable provenance, and certainly not one of the cheap Chinese phones. Don't download an APK file from a third-party app store. Only go through Google Play and Apple Store. Now, even Google Play and Apple Store have occasionally been found to have missed malware-less APKs, and later on they withdrew them from the store. But you can still get, so you have to do some research on somebody says that, oh, go and download this cool app called Face app or something, and you download it, and you never know what can happen. So if you're really worried about somebody installing a keylogger on your phone, then you should not be downloading apps just like that. You have to do some research on figuring out what that app is, what the reputation of the app is, what the reputation of the company is, and other things. Now, the other thing that apps like FaceApp has done is that they steal a lot of data which users give voluntarily. Like there was an app that shows you at various ages, and a lot of people, millions and millions of people had downloaded that app, and then they got a lot of data for their research, for their face recognition research and so on. So these kind of things are also happening, so that you have to be careful about. And also apps when an app, so in Android, for example, the apps ask you for permission when you install them, and then they ask you permission when you first use them. So if you see an app that supposed to not require a camera, suddenly asking you for camera permission, or something that should not require requires internet permission, then you should be very careful about that app, and be suspicious, and go online and do more research on that app, and periodically review the app permissions. So you can go to Google setting and go through the apps, each app, what devices they have permission to access, and you may actually withdraw some of the permissions if you don't think that app should have that permission, and delete apps that you think are not useful and you're not using them often. So you have to clean your phone. Now, one of the biggest concern that is the keylogger. Some apps may actually put a keylogger, so whenever you go to a bank website or type in your PIN, etc., they can actually send that information to a command and control server. So therefore, use virtual keyboard on the sites. Like some banks allow you to type in your password using a virtual keyboard. to use the virtual keyboard rather than using typing the password, etc., on your phone. Uh, Secure communications. So earlier we talked about communicating securely on the phone, like Signal, for example. Here, there are some tools that are also good for communicating securely end-to-end encryption. Some of them are like Keybase, Semaphore, Wire, Wicked Pro, etc. So now Apple FaceTime provides end-to-end encryption, but they collect metadata, right? So now some of the things also use Tor Onion services, which is even more, which will give you more anonymity, right? So anonymity, if you want anonymity, you should use something that is Tor in a. Now, when your data is, a lot of the time we talk about encrypting the data while it is on motion, like WhatsApp, Signal, etc. They do end-to-end encryption, etc. But your data that is stored should also be kept encrypted. Now, there are many things that many software that are available for keeping your data encrypted, and when you need them, you can decrypt them. So VeraCrypt, for example, Mac disk utility gives you that. BitLocker, Firewall, etc. you can use. The strongest protection, of course, is when the computer is turned off, but that's not a solution because you have to work on your computer and you have to turn it on. But when you are turned on, your memory has most of the keys and other information, and there may be a malware that is scavenging your memory. So you have to, there is a possibility of that as well. And smartphones, whenever you lock your smartphone, your disk gets encrypted automatically, right, by default. And that's a very good thing. So when somebody gets hold of your phone, if they cannot guess your PIN, they cannot get your data, even if they hook your flash drive to something else. So that's very important. So for that, you don't use biometric and unlocking like your fingerprint, etc., which can be easily faked, but use a strong PIN. Now, when you share large files, like using Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, and other things, these things don't give you end-to-end encryption. So which means that whatever is in the Dropbox or Google Drive, unless you encrypted it yourself, it will not be encrypted. And therefore, anybody who hacks into a Dropbox account or something has full access to what you store in those places, Google Drive, etc. Now, Firefox Send, that gives you an end-to-end encryption. So even Firefox cannot look at the data. So there are two options. If you're using, when you're sharing files with your colleagues, etc., using Google Drive or OneDrive, etc., you encrypt the file and you ask your colleague to decrypt the file. You may share the key, through other means. That's one way to do it. So even if the platform doesn't give you encryption, you actually are keeping the data encrypted on the drive, so anybody can get access to the drive, cannot really get to see the data. Or you use something like Firefox Send, which gives you end-to-end encryption. Now, another thing that often people make mistake is that they think that if they go incognito mode on Chrome or Firefox, the browsing is private. And that's not the case. What happens is that when you do incognito, the data does not go into the URL you visit on an incognito screen is not going to be saved in the history. So therefore, anybody who uses your computer will not be able to see who you were visiting, right? So that gives you very limited privacy from other users of the same computer. But your URL that you are visiting is visible to the ISP, to the organization whose network you are using. So therefore, it does not give you real privacy. So if you really want to have private browsing, you have to use Tor browser, right? So Tor browser uses onion routing, and then if you use Tor over a VPN, that gives you even better anonymity, because VPN already gives you anonymity, and Tor on top of that will give you more anonymity. The final thing that I want to say is what about your home router. So if your home router is old, and if you are still using WEP or wired equivalence privacy, you should not, because web is easily crackable. So you should go and change the setting or buy a new router so that you have a WPA2 or WPA3 security. And WPA2, WPA3 will require a password or passphrase to connect to the network, right? And this passphrase has to be very strong. If the passphrase is weak, then anybody who is around your home who can get the Wi-Fi signal can actually also connect to your Wi-Fi network. And once they are in your Wi-Fi network, any kind of communication that you are doing, unless it is through an encrypted channel, will be able to see what you are communicating. And if you are communicating password, etc., without HTTPS, etc., then they can actually get those as well. Second thing is that your Wi-Fi router usually has an administrative interface through which you create you create your SSID, etc. This administrative interface comes out of the package. The Wi-Fi router comes with a default password. Usually they are something like admin password or admin, this kind of stuff. Now, researchers have found that an enormous number of users never change that password. And these passwords are well known, right? So so anybody who is close to your home and router, they can actually go to 192.168.0.1 and get to your administrative, get to your administrative access, and then they can change everything for you. They can change your SSID, they change your password, and you will be locked out of your own router. They can also install malware, because through this administrative interface, you actually update the firmware of the router. Now, if they actually, there are firmware malware which they can install, and therefore your router will become a spying engine for all your activities. So all this stuff can happen if you don't change your default username password of your Wi-Fi router. Wi-Fi password, there are two passwords, right? So one is to connect to the administrative interface, to change things, to update firmware and all that activities, add a new channel, all that. Another password is for each channel you are having an SSID, and you are going to change you are going to use a password there, and that password should be either changed regularly, or you have to make a very, very strong password. Now, the password that you make for your SSID at your home, you should not share it with, say, guests. So you should have a guest channel. So you should always create at least two SSIDs, one for yourself and one for guests. And the guest one will not have access to your SSID and signal. So therefore, guest one, whenever somebody comes to your house and requests for a Wi-Fi password, you give them the guest one. As a result, they will never have access to the real one. But if you don't have the two, if you have only one, you share the password. As soon as the guest leaves, you change the password, which is much more cumbersome. So you should better have two channels. You have to update the router's firmware regularly, because again, router firmwares are often having bugs, and they often announce firmware updates. But if you're not a very conscious person, you may not update it for a while, and your router may have lots of security bugs which can be exploited easily. So now modern routers, through the administrative interface, you can make them update the firmware regularly by themselves. If you don't do that, then you have to you have to be sure, you have to make sure that you do it manually by going to that administrative interface. Remote access. So some people like to change the administrative settings of their router from their office. That's a remote access. You should not allow, you should not have that. You should disable that, because then if you can do it, then somebody else can also do it. And if they can guess your password, they can actually change your entire interface. They can use the firmware upgrade to put in a malware and create a completely a spying system for all your activities. Another thing is universal plug and play that allows a Wi-Fi router to open ports, open arbitrary ports as demanded by some device. You should disable that, and you should also disable WPS. That's actually for another easier way to connect to your Wi-Fi. That should not be through a push button and then typing in a very simple pin kind of thing. You should not allow that. So all these things should be disabled. So as I said, that you have to create a guest network, and you can configure the router through the administrative interface to not broadcast your SSID. So unless you know the name of the SSID, you cannot connect to it, right? Of course, there are ways for scanners to actually discover your SSID, so it's not a very foolproof thing. But for low level hackers, this is a good thing to have. For sophisticated hackers, finding the hidden SSID is not a big deal. So this is not a very strong protection, but it is something. And then keep all your devices that are connected to your Wi-Fi up to date. So patch them, all the apps, all the browser extensions, put strong password on devices, because if one of the devices is compromised, they can actually snoop on your entire network and therefore compromise a lot of things. So that's about your Wi-Fi router hygiene. So in closing, I want to say that cybersecurity is a vast field. What I said is just not even scratching the surface. I'm just telling you some things that you should be aware of and you should do as a practice. And oftentimes we don't understand this, but every aspect of our life is at stake. Our personal life and data, our communication, our infrastructure, power, water, transportation, and certainly our mental peace. If suddenly our bank account gets emptied, then you know what can happen to your mental peace. So in this talk, we only talked about personal security issues, and we also did not cover everything. We just tried to give you some bits and pieces of what you should be aware of. But there are bigger things that happen nowadays with governments of other countries, etc., criminal gangs doing infrastructure attacks, and that requires very different strategy and tools. But we can start small and we can start keeping ourselves secure first. So that's all I had in terms of my spiel. But now I'm going to go ahead and look at the questions and see what I can answer. Okay, so is there a possibility that our mobile be hacked by unknown mobile call when we pick up this type of calls? So regular mobile call, I am not, I don't think has that ability. But in WhatsApp, for example, So even in regular mobile call, there may be a possibility that depends on your phone application. So whenever a phone call comes, so let me give you the WhatsApp example of Pegasus. So the Pegasus actually exploited a WhatsApp bug. That WhatsApp bug was basically that whenever a call comes, the WhatsApp gets the call, and video calls, etc., come with some metadata. The metadata is there to display to you who is calling and things like that. Now, this metadata is processed before it is shown on the screen. So this metadata processing was being done in a version of WhatsApp that was before May of 2019, that did not check the metadata for any kind of malformed strings. So what happened is that somebody created a metadata that was a malformed string that was copied into a buffer, and before it was being displayed, and this buffer overflow basically led to an attack on the WhatsApp, and it basically installed a malware called Pegasus, and that's how a backdoor was created, and this was basically reading all data that is coming through somebody's WhatsApp. So when a call comes, if the call comes with some metadata and the call processing software is not securely designed in a secure with a secure design practice, then it is quite possible that the metadata may have malformed malicious strings in them, and that could lead to buffer overflow, and that could lead to an attack on the phone. Now, I don't know of any case where the Android default phone processing has that problem. So it cannot. But if you might have installed some custom phone application which may be of questionable provenance, and that might have some bugs like this. It may process metadata, and that metadata can actually be used to overflow buffer in the software, and thereby victimized. So that is theoretically possible. The Android default phone application is not known to have that problem, but WhatsApp before 2019 May had that problem with video calls, and even if you don't pick up the video calls, it was able to deliver the payload. So that has to be fixed. If your WhatsApp has not been updated since then you should update your WhatsApp. Just like criminals, do the government also use dark web to keep nuclear codes and other important information safe? I don't know, but I doubt that any government will put something like that in a dark web. It's probably has to be kept physically safe in a physical world with a lot of caution. So I don't think that it should be on any computer whatsoever. And even if it's in a computer, that computer should be disconnected from the internet. So I would highly doubt that anybody will keep nuclear codes in the dark web. How to choose a password manager? That's a good question. I gave some names which I found recommended by others. You have to do some research. I think there is a lot of articles on Medium, etc. So you have to read them and you have to choose. Don't trust anybody. Even if I tell you that this is the best password manager, don't trust that. You do your research and find out. So if I create my custom app for messaging and the server used for that using a temporary email, would that provide greater privacy? Since no one knows the server except me, and the server provider, also the provider doesn't know my real email ID, no backtracking. Well, you can do that, but you will have very few people who have the corresponding app. So so one of the problem is with even with using something like Signal or Wire, for example, is that not a lot of people are using them. So if you have friends who don't use Signal, you cannot even talk to them on Signal, right? So similarly, if you create a custom app, you can create, but chances are that you won't have a lot of people using them. Second is Signal's cryptography is phenomenal. The end-to-end encryption, actually, they're the model end-to-end encryption technique that is even used by WhatsApp. So if you are going to roll your own cryptographic library, chances of you making a mistake will be high, right? So all that thing considered, I don't think that a custom app is a good option. Okay, so Adarsh Pandey. Recently, our PM's fundraising website got hacked. There is a lot of vulnerabilities in government websites. Servers are running without latest update. Digital certificates are either missing or expired. When our government will understand the importance of safety, what initiative should be taken from government to avoid these attacks and improve security of our government sites. Now, that would require me another 2 hours. So I would rather not get into that. Recently, we are helping out one of the agencies who got badly ransomware. And when we went there, we found that they're using Ubuntu 14. The Ubuntu 20 point something is in the market. They're using Ubuntu 14, which has a bug in the not only in the kernel itself, right? So there is a dirty cow bug in the kernel which can let anybody take over your server. So let's not worry about the government at this point. It's terrible, and top to bottom things need to change. That will require a lot of discussion. We use many antiviruses like McAfee, Norton. Do they keep us secure? And if yes, then how? Well, again, as I said, that the cybersecurity is never 100%. So cybersecurity is about raising a wall. So you have attackers on the other side and you are on this side. If you don't do anything, you don't have a wall between the attacker and yourself. As you do various things, like the things that I discussed, for example, you're raising the wall. And higher you raise the wall, harder it is for the attacker to attack you. But for a very determined and very well powered attacker, like a government, like say Chinese government, it is not very difficult to scale the wall, even if the wall is very high, right? So there is no 100% security. Having said that, you have to be always vigilant and you have to do the minimal so that your wall is raised. So antivirus is a like kind of the base of a wall. If you don't use antivirus on your laptop, on your desktop, etc., you are basically asking for trouble, right? Now, antivirus usually can only detect things that the antivirus company has already seen, and they actually keep looking out for all the new viruses and the various kinds of malwares that are circulating, and they add signatures of those viruses, etc., into the database. So you will often see that when you log in, your antivirus gives you a warning that you have to download the latest definition files or latest database. So because they discovered some new malware, etc., and their signatures has to be brought into your installation. So for known, well-known viruses and malware, antiviruses can work because they have the signatures. So every time a new file is downloaded, they will check it. And every time you ask the antivirus to scan your entire machine, it will go through every file and try to look for those signatures. So that's the minimal you should do. But that doesn't mean that it is completely safe, because there may be malware, what we call zero-day malware. Zero-day malware or malware that is just been launched and you were unfortunate enough to get attacked by it on the first day, or before an antivirus company actually gotten hold of it and analyzed it and extracted a signature and put it into their product. So in that case, you can be still attacked. right? So and then malware is not the only attack that can happen. People can actually remote access your computer. They can send you payloads which don't even get get stored in a file. They are memory resident malware. So various things can happen. So anti-malware or antivirus is not giving you full security, but it's the minimal you should do. So yes, can taking backup may allow to save ransomware file in backup storage? Yes. So if the ransomware file is stored on your machine, see, ransomware file has to execute either files don't execute by themselves, right? So they have to either have a somebody has to click on them, or somebody has to execute them, or somehow it has to be launched, right? You can have a ransomware file on your disk, but you never click on it, never call it through another script or anything, then the ransomware will not execute. So if your ransomware file is stored in your file system, and then you back up the file system, it's not going to actually launch itself without having a trigger, right? So that should be not an issue unless you by mistake trigger it. So mobile vendors usually stop giving security updates for a phone after 2-3 years of its release. What should such mobile users probably do to be safe? So yeah, so if that happens, mobile vendors is actually there is mobile companies are notorious for planned obsolescence. So planned obsolescence is often built into actually Apple and others were actually penalized by courts in Europe for this planned obsolescence. So they actually slow down after 2 years or so. They slow down their operating system, etc., so that people go and buy their latest phone and etc. So that's a problem. So these phones etc. designed by plan to be only there for 2-3 years. So after that, that's why they stop giving new releases. So now if you're using a more respectable vendor like Google, like Google Pixel, for example, they don't do that in 2-3 years, because I have a 3-year-old phone and it's still getting all the updates. But sometimes even update is not possible, because they stop giving update for the older versions, and they actually give you update in the form of new versions like Android 11. Now your hardware configuration may not be able to support that. In that case, you have to change your phone. So yeah, so if you don't get security updates, you are on your own, and you are open for attacks. So you cannot really do much other than changing your phone. Does Chrome does not provide end-to-end encryption like Firefox? Not yet. So now BTech student, I want to learn cybersecurity and want to pursue a career. Guide me regarding how I should start. Well, that's a very difficult question. Here we are talking about awareness. Now, if you want to build career, you have to talk to there are various institutes and so on. You have to talk to them. Why the Play Store does not check? See, the Play Store does they have some software through which they do check for obvious security problems, whether some thing is a malware and so on. But none of these methods are foolproof, right? So we also develop malware analysis tools here in my lab, and we cannot get 100% accuracy. It's not possible, because many real good applications have features that are very similar to a malware, and sometimes malwares have features like good applications. So it's very difficult. So now Face app is by design supposed to send your face picture to a server. That's its functionality. So Google Play cannot say that you cannot send something to a server and still give me an image of your aged picture, right? So it's up to the user to decide whether they want to use it and upload their picture. Some users may not mind at all if their picture is all over the place, and some users may not want to contribute to a large corpus of data where their face is being used without getting paid, because supposedly you are supposed to you are supposed to get paid if they are using your personal data, but they are not doing that. So in that sense, face app is doing something kind of unethical in the sense, but it's not completely unethical in the sense that you are agreeing to do this, you're volunteering to do this, obviously not understanding the implications. But so I don't think that it's a matter of policy that one has to decide. So it's up to the user to use the discretion. Yes, so if you have so question is that Google Drive, Dropbox, etc. not encrypted by themselves. So therefore, do you suggest material to be encrypted by the user before uploading it? Yes, if it is sensitive material, say question paper for an exam of your students and you're sharing with another instructor, those kind of things you must encrypt. You cannot have it unencrypted in Dropbox or Facebook. Or if it is Trump's tax statements, it must be encrypted before putting it in the Dropbox, before sharing it with his lawyers. Uh, how can someone listen to our call conversation, and how can we prevent it? So your call conversation depends. So if you're using uh, you know various kinds of phones, like if you're using a landline phone, then only way to listen to your call conversation is to do wiretapping, which is illegal. If you are using a cordless phone, then somebody can actually listen to the signals and decipher the signals, because between cordless phone and the cordless receiver, there is no encryption going on. Between now, if you're using a voice over IP system, and then your IP packets can be snooped on and can be listened into. Now there are voice over IP, like Signal voice over IP is encrypted, so nobody can actually decipher what you are saying. So you have to use some application where it is end-to-end encrypted, even during voice call, and then you can keep your conversation private. So there is a question. Earlier, I used to buy antivirus, but from last few years, after some personal research, I trust Windows Defender more than any other antivirus. Yeah, so Defender is good. So you can actually use it. As I said, that no antivirus is 100% secure, giving 100% security. So you can use any of them to, as I said, to raise the wall of to decrease the possibility of falling easy prey to an attacker. But that doesn't mean that so if you use Windows Defender versus McAfee versus Symantec versus Kaspersky, um, there will be very small fractional difference in terms of the risk. So Windows Defender is good enough. So China Mobile is not safe, in my opinion. They have UC browser, for example. Now it is actually banned, but it turns out that they have a lot of backdoors. They like to collect data, not necessarily for compromising your bank account and so on. They are probably collecting more data on people, more for creating advertisement models and so on. So I don't use Chinese mobiles because um, I don't know for sure that they have backdoors. I don't know with for sure that they have Trojans, but the risk is high. So if you want to take a risk, if you're using your phone just for fun and entertainment, then it doesn't matter. Listening to music and making occasional calls to friends and family, I think it should be okay. If you are doing important business work and business secrets are being sent across and all that stuff, then you may not want to use a Chinese phone. Well, SNOT should be applied by your system administrator. So IDSs are not best applied by regular users. So intrusion detection systems. So you must have firewall. Like if you have a laptop or if you have a desktop, etc., you should have the firewall up and so on. You should disconnect. You should close all the ports that you don't use, etc. But IDS is normally supposed to be used by our system administrator to keep you safe. Individually having IDS will not be very easy for you to actually make sense of and do it. But if you're a power user, you can use IDS like Snort. How do you know that we are hacked? Oh, that's $1 million question. In fact, most surveys show that it takes more than 200 days for companies to know that they have been hacked. So knowing that you have been hacked is a very difficult thing, and I think that it is known to be a problem. Torrent is certainly not a very safe thing to use because uh, torrent is already actually to some extent illegal in many places. It's basically for pirating software, etc., pirating movies and so on. So using torrent, I would say I will not use it, especially from work computer and so on. If you have a personal computer on which you never do anything other than entertainment, maybe you can use torrent there. But if you're using work computer, etc., I would be very wary of using torrent. Oh yes, so pirated Windows is one of the biggest problem in Indian cybersecurity, because once you're pirated, you cannot get all the security updates, and uh, I think that one has to be very so use Linux in if you cannot purchase Windows software, but don't use pirated Windows. That's going to open yourself to extreme risk. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend that, especially if you're doing things which are supposed to be confidential. You don't want to be ransomware, you don't want to be compromised, etc. I wouldn't use Windows pirated version. uh, Regarding updates questions, you said Pixel phones provide regular updates, so are Pixel phones safer than iPhone? uh, well, I don't have the slides here, but the number of vulnerabilities found in Pixel and iPhones are almost equal in proportion. When I say Pixel, I mean Android. So iPhone is only advantage of iPhone is that iPhone is based on a proprietary operating system. iOS is not open source, so they assume that once it is not open source, hackers cannot easily discover vulnerabilities in it, and therefore they cannot have zero-day exploits, etc., which has been proven to be not true. So I don't think that iOS is more secure than Android. But there may be some if I remember correctly, that they have almost equal percentage of equal numbers of vulnerabilities discovered every year. So I personally don't have data to say that iOS is more secure than Android, or vice versa. But certainly, Android has more user base, and therefore Android has more is a more lucrative target for hackers, because if they can compromise Android, they get more users to compromise. So in that sense, Android probably is more frequent target by attackers. But other than that, I don't think in terms of vulnerabilities in the software, they have huge difference from each other that way. Well, usually when you download from official site, they actually tell you whether it has adware in it or not, right? So you cannot uh, uh, tell unless you do some analysis of the software and look at the various hooks in there. Uh, just by looking at the software, you cannot tell whether it has adware or not. But you can actually analyze the software with various static analysis techniques, and look at the various import file the DLL it imports, and various functions it imports, and from that you can make a pretty good guess about what this software does. But that requires some invasive analysis of the file you downloaded. What kind of changes we can see in our system when it is hacked? That depends. If you get ransomware, then you will get you will get a huge ransom demand, and you cannot access all your files, and they will be encrypted. If you get a persistent threat, like a botnet, for example, then you might see some log file in some log files. Although many botnets actually manipulate the log files to not be visible, but you might also see some network activity. So if you actually use something like Snort, for example, the IDS, then you can see some network connectivity to your machine is connecting to some network that you are not familiar with. You have not tried to connect to it yourself. Uh, so, so there are many things that can be done. Usually, this is best detected by the organization's IT team or security team, if they are actually using intrusion detection systems. Individuals may not be able to easily see these things. Well, IDS and IPS, oftentimes an IDS comes with some capabilities to respond to some of the threats, and then they become IPS. So I wouldn't differentiate IDS and IPS too much. So I think that depends on the product. Well, somebody is asking what are the confidential files that a student would have. Uh, if you access your bank account from your machine, uh, your you may have stored your password in your browser. That kind of information is confidential. If your machine gets compromised with a keylogger, then even if you don't have a file, when you type in your password, etc., you can get that will get compromised. You can also have uh, uh, your credit cards and all that stuff, which you may not want everybody to see. That can get compromised. So there, your code and your data that you have done painstakingly done research on may get compromised. Your homework may get stolen and submitted in somebody else's name. So anything can happen. Uh, okay, so I think that how to stop tapping of a mobile phone. Uh, that depends on how it is being tapped. So if it is being tapped through a malware on your phone versus if it is being tapped by reading the packets of a voice over IP, that depends. Are biometric login or face recognition better alternative to password based login and system? No, biometry is always a bad thing. If you lose it, you cannot recreate it. So I think biometry should be never used for any kind of authentication. So that's a big mistake that Aadhaar has done using biometric. So in my view, biometry should not be used. Okay, so I'm gonna stop it here, and we have tried to answer some of the questions, and hopefully some people got something to think about and worry about in terms of keeping themselves safe. For others, I think that it might be too trivial information that most people are aware of. But in any case, tomorrow at 4 o'clock, we'll have another session on talking about the laws and regulations in India in terms of cybersecurity. And we'll see you there if you're going to join. Thank you. Have a great day. The recording should be available on Google, on YouTube, because it's being sent live to YouTube, and it will be stay there. So you just look for that. Thank you all. So for listening, and see you later. Yeah, if you have registered for tomorrow, you will get the link tomorrow morning. So I'm waiting for the registration until tomorrow morning, and then I'll send the link for tomorrow's Zoom session.